So my name's Leah Leadbeater, and I've been in aquatics for about 12 years now. And I got into aquatics because after I had my babies, I wanted to do something still active in the community, still teaching a little bit. I wasn't sure what that looked like, so I actually just went to the rec center in our local town, and I started teaching skating programs and like gym and fun, rhythm and rhyme. And I've always loved the water, and I'm a teacher by trade. So after I teach my classes, I'd take my littles with me and we'd go swimming in the pool.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And one of the lifeguards had said to me at the time, "Have you ever thought of becoming a swimming instructor?" And I'm like, no, I never have. And so I thought, okay, well, let's do this. I like being in the water. And it was that was the start for me. So I started taking courses. I was 32, I think, 33 when I started taking the courses because I was a stay-at-home mom. It took me about a year and a half, 2 years to sort of get through them all.
Right.
I know people can burn through them quicker. I just didn't have that kind of time.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and it also afforded me the chance to get to know the staff. I took almost all my courses in High River, Alberta, where I live. So I took them and I loved them. And so I've been in aquatics now for 12 years, and I will never look back. I love it.
Did you have any aquatics background, like swim club, synchro, lessons?
Nothing. I had no aquatics background at all, outside of just being a pool rat. Growing up in the summer, we had a pool just about 2 kilometers away from my house. At the park time, it was called Lindsay Park Sports Center. Now it's the Repsol,
in downtown Calgary.
Downtown Calgary, which was about 7 kilometers from my house. So between another little local pool we'd go to, and that one we'd get on our bikes every day in the summer, and we'd be at one of them, and we just frolicked. And lessons in school, because we had lessons every year when I grew up in school. So.
Did you find for the actual skills, like the endurance swim or the brick, you had to build up some skills over time?
I did. It was quite funny, actually. I had started I thought, I'm a grown-up, I'm a good swimmer, this is going to be just fine. It was not the case. So I remember when I took my first bronze med, and I had I had both my babies, and I had my suck-it-in swimsuit that the moms wear, and it drags because it's got skirts and materials all over, and I bombed my time swimming. It was terrible. And so we did it again the next day and the next day. By the time we got to day 3, and I'm still wearing this, suck it up mom suit, I couldn't actually get it off. My arms were so tired. I'm sitting in the change room, I'm crying because I thought I'd failed. I thought, this is terrible. I'm doing a terrible job. And I went home in my swimsuit and my wet towel. Devastated, but I passed. I did it. But it was a learning curve for me. I didn't know my strokes were bad because you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
Right? You kind of get in the water, you frolic along, really only going by what maybe I did in my last swim class in grade 10 phys ed. So that was the biggest thing. And with bronze med and bronze cross, there are some life-saving strokes you need to know, but they're not really there critiquing your swim. It wasn't until I started really taking my WSI, I'm a water safety instructor, through the Red Cross, that I realized that there was a real plan here. I needed to figure it out, which was about a year into my deciding I'm going to be a swimmer. And as a stay-at-home mom, my husband and I had budgeted for me to stay at home. It wasn't a struggle or anything, but the course was $150, and I didn't want to go home to my husband, who, he's a great husband, but had to watch the children all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not a stretch, that's what they're supposed to do. And then we'd also put out $150, and of course the $200 swimsuit I had to buy, because I'm fancy. And I failed. So there was just no option for not complaining. So that's what brought me back, my drive to not shame myself in front of my husband.
What was the makeup of that class like? Was it mostly older participants, or was it a mix of younger? How did that go?
Oh my gosh, yes. So that was genius too, because I'm in my 30s, and it was primarily teenagers.
Okay.
So actually, and as a grown-up, I'm fairly comfortable with my body, so I didn't have any outside of, I'm a mom, but I didn't have any issues with anybody touching me. But the teenagers truly didn't really want to hang out with me too much. I don't care, but it wasn't their idea of cool. So there was definitely an age gap, but it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. What I did do, I have a girlfriend, Marcy, who, when I started taking these courses, I actually bullied her to take them with me. And so I did have one other grown-up in class with me, which was nice. So we kind of got to work together. We've been friends forever.
It worked out, right?
It worked out.
She stayed in aquatics
She
as well.
did stay in aquatics, and we've done most of our courses together through everything. And aquatics is, especially when lifeguarding and instructing, tends towards younger staff, just because that's who's feeding us: swim club, water polo, our high school students,
right,
and our candidates in our lessons who we're trying to pull out to be lifeguards. So we don't typically get a lot of older staff until we get into more the administration.
So you take this class, you pass. You're probably very excited to pass all of your courses.
Probably ate a donut afterwards to celebrate.
And then what, right? So was the goal always to get a job, or was the goal to challenge yourself?
Yeah, the goal actually was always to teach. I'm a teacher. I went to education, or I was in special education in university, and it is fundamentally who I am as a person, to teach, to lead, to mentor. So, and I didn't really, the lifeguarding was, I enjoyed it without a doubt, but the ultimate goal was, of course, to teach. You're teaching right away typically at the pool we are at, so if you're lifeguarding, you're also teaching. And I knew probably within about 6 months that I wanted to be a trainer. But at that point, you couldn't become a trainer until you had had a couple of years under your belt, which it's sound reasoning, I understand. It irritated me at the time as a grown-up, but now I understand why. So you can sort of master your craft. We also taught Aquafit from the beginning as well. And you needed no training for it. Literally, there was a file folder with 50 different lesson plans in there, and you did a co-teach for a couple dry, you did a couple in the water, and then somebody watched you and you just went. And I have a gymnastics background and a dance background, so the body movement and the muscle movement was never, I always got that. Changing it to what happens in the water is a little bit different, but I really enjoyed that too. So yeah, it was lots of fun. And from there, I've just taken lots of courses so that I can be fluent in how our body works in the water and our mechanics. And it's definitely a passion for me.
What does aquatic fitness, or like Aquafit, what does that look like for people who haven't taken a class?
Well, what I primarily see actually is a lot of older patrons, because what happens when you're in the water is you don't have the gravity, you have a lot of buoyancy, so you don't have that pounding of the ground all the time as what you have with dry land fitness. But in the water, the water typically is warmer and you're able to move easier with the buoyancy, you don't have the impact, and it's a lot more fluid. But at the same time, although I think sometimes we get caught up in it being for our older patrons, it's actually a stellar activity for our younger patrons. So if you were to go to the U of C or the U of A or some of those elite teams, when they do cross training, they do a lot of their cross training in the water. And it's not just swimming, because swimming in and of itself can be hard on your rotator cuffs, or if you're not doing it properly, other things can get wrecked. But with the aqua fitness, you can make it as high intensity or as low intensity as meet the needs of that individual or that group. So when I teach in High River, we have an older group, and although I can take it I can make the class fairly aggressive, it is definitely a slower class. We are working on range of motion, mobility, keeping them functional in their everyday life. In Okotoks, where I teach, where we are now, my Saturday morning classes are a boot camp class. Right. And it's aggressive, there's a lot of cardio, there's a lot of interval training, and there's a lot of yelling with love in my heart. But they're very, so you can be anywhere, honestly, with it. It just depends on the type of class you're in and what you're interested in and what will meet your needs.
So it's a fitness class, the participants are in the water, instructor is typically on deck, and are the movements like anything on land, or are they pretty unique to the water?
They're very similar to what's on land. Lots of my training from gymnastics and from dance I use in the water. We just have to be cognizant that you do have the resistance of the water and the buoyancy of the water. So for instance, one of my favorites is we often talk about a figure four, which is, where you pop your ankle on top of your knee and you're stretching your glutes or your hammies, or when you're bringing your knee up and you're doing a stretch. When you're on land, you have gravity pulling you. So I'm pulling up, right? When you're in the water, you have all that buoyancy. So when I'm on land, I have to sink into it, as I pull up. When you're on land, they have to pull up and they have to lean back so they get that same stretch because the water is pushing you up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not everybody has a passion for aqua fitness. I can speak myself as somebody who's not, I don't have a biomechanical background. I don't have a dance or gymnastics background. So the muscle groups and the movements were really challenging for me to learn. How do you make your aquafit classes different and exciting? Because I know a lot of clients love coming to your classes. What is it about aquafitness that inspires you, or how do you make your classes different?
Honestly, I typically start with my music. Okay. And I know actually we often get caught up in what it is the client wants. And yes, of course, we have to provide that service. They are there and we are here to help them. But if I'm not inspired by my music, then I find it hard to inspire my clients. So one of my favorite tips and tricks that I've done forever is when I have my clients, I'll pick 25 songs that I know are really familiar to them and maybe the genre they're familiar with. And then every class I have them, I'll change out one song and I'll put in something a little newer, a little fresher. And so by the time we get through a couple months or 3 months, I've actually changed my whole playlist. They don't even recognize it. And then when I change that song, I'll bring in a new exercise. So something a little different, maybe something a little more aggressive, something a little funky. And I usually give them the option. I'll say, this is new. We haven't done this before. Give me some feedback. And I may or may not follow their feedback. But it does give them the option, or it gives them the feeling of me caring about where they are. And of course I do, right? Where they are, and then, trying to add different pieces that make it interesting, right? And they get to be a part of it. So the music is a key piece, and then asking for feedback, I think, is another key piece. But I think the other thing is I try to focus on what my clients need in that. I have a grouping of clients that when I'm teaching my class, they need we slowly rise up, and then we slowly come down. Sometimes if we're feeling really fancy, I can get a second peak. Here in High River with my boot camp, they like the interval trainings. So my music reflects that. It's like hard and fast, and then we'll slow down and we'll do some muscle endurance. And then we're hard and fast, and we'll slow down and we'll do some more muscle endurance, right? And we get harder and harder the whole time. So, and I probably have 70 or 80 different lesson plans. And I may or may not follow the lesson plan. I always have a lesson plan with me because it's really easy to get off track. Lots of people can go out and just wing it. I'm not a wing it kind of girl. I need to have something there to keep me on track. I have lots of people who ask me for my lesson plans as well. And I know some people feel like their plans are proprietary. I do not. I have learned over the years that let's share with everybody because I know for a fact how I teach a class, and if I give you the exact same lesson plan, it's going to be completely different if you teach a class. So why not help each other? Don't keep the secret. Let's just make each other better.
Well, and can't, honestly, you can't scale. You couldn't teach every aqua fitness class in Okotoks and High River if you wanted to, right? There's physically no way you could do it. Plus, as you said, that there's a difference for what people are looking for. Some clients, they want, kind of the drill sergeant that's telling them what to do, and some people, they want more of a friendly experience. And so not only is it different who's teaching, but it's also different lesson plans and different types of content.
Absolutely. We have lots of instructors in High River, and we have lots of instructors here. And although some of us may teach similarly, and I'd like to think we primarily use the same language, you'll get a different workout with every class. And I could, it doesn't matter what I say, what I might be focusing on for a specific exercise would be different than what you were focusing on for the exact same exercise, right? And when you're in the water, you have the ability to focus on, are we moving forward through the water? Are we working on our, like on our quad, or are we moving that foot backwards through the water and working on our glutes, right? It just depends. And we do have it dry, but it's different in the water because you have all that gooey goodness of the water stopping you and slowing you down.
Well, and I think it's hard too because you get different clients that they really like a certain style or they like a certain movement. And some clients especially, they like to know what's coming, and different instructors, like you said, they teach differently, and so it can sometimes cause some resistance or some tension because, you know, it's not the workout they knew or it's not the workout they expected. And that's unfortunately just the way things are when you have, recreation or group fitness, right? People have schedule changes, people have things that come up, and they can't have the same instructor all the time.
It's incredibly true. I think most places try to keep their instructors moving around, especially during the day. I know I'm consistent here because I'm a contractor here, so they have to be consistent. But at my home pool, we change it up a lot because I think there is the want of the same instructor all the time. But we get dry and we get, well, not that I get bored, but I do feel like I get repetitive. And you can see it in your patrons as well. So maybe they have a preference over one instructor or over one instructor over another, but it's one person, it's one day, it's one class, it's 45 minutes. We can work it out. And everybody needs that opportunity to learn.
Well, and I think that's so key too, is aqua fitness. One of the things that I struggled with when I was new to it is that it's still very new. I haven't done it a lot, and so I as an instructor am not comfortable because I can't anticipate all the things that could go wrong. I don't have alternative movements off the top of my head ready to go, or if there's a pool space issue, right? It really requires, for all of our swimming instructors, a really dynamic ability to shift and change and accommodate, and what if something happens? Or I noticed today you had somebody come in late in the second class, right? Which you were really good about it, but that would throw me off my game, right? Because I'm already into the core of the workout.
I do find it irritating. But
I think everybody does, right?
We're in the public and we're not allowed to be irritated. So, and it depending on, I have a facility I work at where that's not allowed, which I truly, deeply and intrinsically appreciate. Yes. It's at this pool, it's a little bit different. It's frustrating in that by that point I was like hardcore into my workout. We're almost 15 minutes in and I was doing interval training and we were quite intense, and so I have to leave and everybody's watching me, which is fine, but it does put a lot of focus on the clients, and not everybody's comfortable with that, and just keep it slow, take 5 minutes before you really join in. And I mean, it's just a conversation in the end, but it'd be nicer if I didn't have to have it, but it's okay. It's fine.
I think it's a struggle for every instructor, whether it's aqua fitness or some swimming instructors for lessons, right? Every facility has a different policy, and we have to be flexible and work within it whether we want to or not.
Well, last week I was teaching, and I try to be fairly clear every 3 or 4 minutes about what muscle group we're using, what it is I'm looking for, what my expectations are. And we were doing a froggy exercise, right? So you're going this, your heels are together, you're bringing them up towards your bits and you're pressing down and everything's nice and tight. I always think of Suzanne Summers, right? when we're doing it. And so this woman is in the water, she's doing the exercise very passively, which is her choice, right? And she was, I just don't know what this is for. And you know what I thought, and I don't get flustered very often, but it did throw me because she was new to my class, and I kind of, I give direction to the class to move on, and I move to the side and I'm explaining to her what it is I'm looking for and where she's supposed to be feeling it. She's like, oh, okay. But I was about halfway through my class, and it didn't railroad me, but it did really throw me. And I thought, oh, I didn't see that one coming. Right? I mean, I always have a plan and I just go back to my lesson plan. But, you feel like you lose that momentum. Usually, I'll ask if you have questions when I'm ready to ask.
Yes.
Right? When they just kind of come out of nowhere. At that point, because the classes are quite intense, I'm just sometimes not prepared. It was a good learning experience for me.
Well, and it's interesting too because I don't think of frog jumps as, they're not a low intensity activity, right? So for someone to say, I don't understand why I'm doing this, mechanically that she either wasn't understanding it or wasn't doing it correctly, because there's no way you can miss the coordination. There's a lot of activity that goes into a froggy jump. Right?
Really, and especially, and it's a little, and if you're shallow, right, you have the resistance of the water and you're pressing off, so you have a little bit of a jump in there. In the deep, it's very easy to be passive if you are not focused on what muscle groups you're using. So, I'm telling her, you need to shift your hips forward a little bit, open up your hip flexors a little more, pressing down right in front of your belly button, right? And you're looking at, getting little squishy bits in between your thighs, right? Which they always like. But it was just one of those simple things. And okay, Leah, we're fine. But it does, you get in your own head. It's an easy place to be.
Well, and I think it also leads me to think about one of the other challenges I see instructors have with Aqua Fitness, which is that the participants don't want to follow the prescribed equipment. They want to modify, right? So as you're saying froggy jump, I'm thinking, was this an individual in the deep end who didn't want to wear a belt because she thought the workout would be harder, but then without the buoyancy belt, there's not the correct midline position.
I was just talking about that with some ladies who were coming in. For the most part, most of my patrons wear the belt. I have a couple who don't because they prefer the noodle. Whatever, it's okay. They have buoyancy. And I said, it's really important to aqua size, not survive. Because the buoyancy allows you to do the exercise properly. If you don't have the belt on, all of a sudden you're sculling like crazy, or sculling when I don't want you to scull, or now you're doing a flutter kick, or you're doing a scissor kick, and not actually able to do the exercise and focus on the muscle groups I'm trying to focus on. And if you want to do that, you can do that on your own. Aquafit's not cheap, right? So you're literally paying me, or the town, to do your own thing when you could do your own thing and pay $3 less.
But I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding. Not that we are swimming experts, but we've taken classes to understand things like buoyancy. If you haven't spent a lot of time in the water, buoyancy depends on your body position. Are you full across the water? Are you upright? And so people, they think I'm a competent swimmer, and I love that analogy of, is it aqua size versus survive? People think, well, I can swim. Why would I wear, it's the misunderstanding about equipment or life jackets or flotation devices, right? Instead of saying, well, no, we need you to be upright, because then you're not working your core muscles if you're hunched over trying to stay in place.
Or my other favorite is, and I've got a little bit of love on me without a doubt, and we all know, and we know fat floats, right? So, I'm a lady of a certain size, and there's lots of ladies in here, and women are floatier than men anyway, right? Yes. Men are more dense, they definitely need a belt. It's just a no-go, there's no option, right? But women have a tendency to think, I'm a good swimmer, I've got fat on me, I'm floating anyway. If I don't wear more buoyancy, I'm going to have a harder workout. No, you're just going to do your workout poorly, is actually what happens. And changing that thinking is impossible. I always have the conversation, right? So when I see somebody, I might not catch them before they get in the water, but I'll try to catch them afterwards or at some point and ask them what their thinking is behind not wearing a belt or using a noodle. And that's usually what it is. It's, well, I work better without it. And so then I give them the information. I do try to modify for them occasionally if I can, because they're still here for a workout. But, for the most part, changing that school of thought is very difficult. But most of the patrons are pretty good. Right.
It makes me think of this story. So this was probably 15 years ago when I worked at the University of Toronto. We had, and I'm not a basketball person, but I knew enough when patrons are kind of looking around, that somebody important has just come in. So we had, the Toronto Raptors had a player called Andre Baragnani, who was 6'8", Italian basketball player.
Yeah.
And he was having, he'd had some sort of surgery, and he was doing his rehabilitation in our 50-meter pool, so very, very deep water.
Fancy.
And he would come in, very, very tall, skinny gentleman, and he would put on 3 Aqua Fitness belts, because you think of that lean muscle mass, right? 6'8", he's got to be close to 200 pounds based on just height and bones. And he would come in and put on these Aqua Fitness belts, and the trainers would kind of sit over on the side, and he would literally slow jog with his nose visible at the deck level for an hour and a half. And people are asking, like, what is he doing? He's barely moving. But it was this very precise, very controlled, biomechanically correct jogging for an hour and a half. He's barely moving along the length of the pool. Right? And people are saying, but he's not doing anything. And it's like, no, he is literally every,
so true.
Right? Every, and it was just some people got it. Okay, he's wearing the belt, because this was the other argument. Well, he's an NBA player. He might not be a good swimmer, but he's also got lean muscle mass. And to do what his trainers want him to do in his legs has nothing to do with his upper body. Right? So for him to focus on his legs, the same way some triathletes, I learned this from a lady who was trained for Ironman, she would come in and swim only with her arms. And I said to her at the time, like, biomechanically you should have legs and arms. And she said to me, no, if you're gonna bike 100 miles and swim a marathon, I gotta save my legs. What are my arms doing?
Genius.
And I thought, oh my goodness, of course, right? So she's saying, I'm not doing Olympic swimming. I'm doing swimming that's appropriate to the fact that my legs are going to be fully exhausted. This is a rest for my legs. I'm going to tow my legs. I'm going to focus on my arms, right? And it's the inverse for that water jogging, right? He was going to focus on his legs, and upper body doesn't need to do anything, right?
And I don't do it often, because I find the clients typically don't want the slow movements in class, right? They want the burn. They want, to feel like they're losing a little bit of air. It's across the board. People like that. But maybe every couple months, I'll throw in like a muscle endurance, and I slow it down. And invariably, every time, they're like, that was really hard. I'm like, it is really hard. Right? And they do enjoy it, but once every couple months I find the general public is enough. But they are brutal to have your form picture perfect, to be engaging your muscles in a meaningful, relevant way for each exercise you're doing, and being conscious of what you're doing is incredibly difficult for more than 30 or 45 seconds, right? That's sort of where we are when we do any exercise,
Well, and I think it's also too for Aqua Fitness, people like the community, right? People are coming for the community, the experience. Like you said, they could come and do it on their own in a lane swim or in a free swim when it's not COVID, but they are coming because they want to socialize. They're coming because they want a class experience, like you said, with the music, with the perhaps something they wouldn't do themselves, with an arc up and an arc down. It's not just, I can jog for 10 minutes and it's boring, right?
Well, and lots of times they don't think of the equipment they can use, or at some pools they have the equipment, not right now during COVID, but at some pools you have equipment available to use. At other pools, you either have to bring your own or you have to ask for it, but you don't know what to ask for.
Correct.
So if you go to a class, and hopefully as your instructor becomes more competent, and their repertoire of exercises more vast, they're able to use some of that different equipment and in different ways. We don't realize, one of my favorite exercise classes I learned from another instructor, KJ Johnson, years ago, was exercise classes with balls. And you don't realize that when you're little, we carry around these little balls all the time, and you throw it from hand to hand, and you'll throw it up in the air and you catch it with the other hand, or you close your eyes, or you catch it behind your head. It's not a big deal. And then one day, and I'm going to say probably in your 20s, it just disappears, and you didn't even know it was gone. And I do this class about once a month, and I'll see it with my teenagers occasionally come into the classes, and they can still do it. It's not a big deal. But as soon as they get into their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, they can't actually throw the ball with one hand and catch it with the other.
Yeah.
And it's those small things that if you can keep your patrons and your customers aware of, that's why we're here, to find those little things that you didn't know you were losing, to work on them so we don't lose them.
Yes.
Right? And there are little aha moments that keep them coming back.
Well, and I think, like you said, there's so much that's it's the physical workout, but then it's also the mental and the neurological firing, right? Like things that I don't do very often, I should do them to try and keep the brain either active or, maybe not developing, but not atrophying, at least by kind of doing these strange things.
Well, and when we do new things, we create new neural pathways in our brain, which also prevents Alzheimer's, and those new things also help those neural pathways fire quicker. And as we age, our brain just has a tendency, by virtue of aging, it's not as soft and supple. I always think of my brain like a sponge, and it loses that elasticity and in and of itself, its ability to learn even the old tasks or relearn and do the new tasks that we're trying to do with our body. So, getting in the water in a safe place where you're not going to fall. Right? We've got a belt on, we're safe, you've got lifeguards around you, you've got lots of people there. And falling is a big thing as you age. And so you can learn these new activities in an environment where actually it's really hard for people to see what you're doing. So you have a little bit of anonymity as well. The only person who can really see what's happening is the instructor. So if I know somebody is a little bit shy or on the quieter side, I can always have those conversations separate from everybody else, and it's really easy to be your own person and learn at your own pace in aquatics, I think.
Yes. No, I think what you were saying, the activities of daily living, so preventing slips, trips, and falls for any population. I remember a similar story. You were mentioning KJ earlier when when I first saw her using the face cloths to teach.
Oh my gosh, yes, that was so good.
She puts the face cloth on the bottom of the pool, and then the individual uses their foot to move the face cloth. And I'm thinking, what is this for? And she was explaining that winter is coming, at least in that lesson. This is your slipping, right? And so you're getting used to not having a secure foot plant, and then you're also creating a situation where you're creating a little bit of resistance by having to also push your foot down on the bottom of the pool in the shallow class instead of just this sort of free motion, in deep water. So depth also for aqua fitness seems to make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, that was a good one. I totally forgot about that one. It was lovely. And you know what? Another thing, I haven't done this in a long time because I haven't been in a shallow basin in a while, is the practicing of the falling.
Yes.
With the noodle, right? Like you have the noodle and you practice falling forward, but you can't really fall in the water, but you can stabilize yourself. You're able to stay stable in the water and then feel that and then get that motion. So if you do fall and you're dry, you're practicing those muscle groups to help yourself.